Alright, what's up guys and welcome back. In this video we're going to be talking all about amphibious assaults, which are very much different than they were in Axis and Allies Global 40. So make sure you pay attention. Alright, let's go. Okay, amphibious assaults. Now they have gone over a complete makeover from Axis and Allies Global 40, which I absolutely love. It is much more difficult to amphibiously assault in this game and much more punishing, which is a welcome change. Now before we get on to the actual amphibious assault I've set up here, there's another topic we need to discuss real quick. Okay, looking at this example, we're going to be talking about this from the perspective of a Japanese turn. Now the Japanese want to kill both this destroyer and this destroyer. It's too far to go around, 1, 2, 3, and they can't go through this C zone because it has other units in there to get to this guy. So what you can do is what's called a screening force, which you declare at the beginning of your turn. You move all your units in, you say, I'm going to screen this attack. So you split your units into a screening force and then the secondary force. What's going to happen is your screening force will attempt to clear out this C zone and say we kill this destroyer, yippee. Now your secondary force can then move on to its main objective and move on through up to one space, so you can't come all the way out here. It has to be an adjacent space. They can move on through and either just stay there, or if there are enemy units present, they can engage in combat. Now this is a really cool concept in this game. It lets you clear out two zones that may not have been within reach of you in Axis and Allies Global 40. You can do that in this game, which is cool. And then combat will occur here, and it doesn't really, the outcome for this example doesn't matter. The point is that the combat does occur. So we had combat here first, and then our secondary force was able to move through this zone unimpeded and conduct combat in C Zone 96. So that's cool. And that is exactly how amphibious assaults work as well. Coming back over here, I've got a scenario set up here. So the way this works is we've got a screening force here of a bunch of destroyers, some light cruisers, and a heavy cruiser. They're going to attempt to clear out this zone of enemy surface warships, being these four guys. And if that happens, these guys are removed, these guys win, yay. Now, if this force loses to the British forces here, these guys can retreat to whatever zone they came from. So if your screening force loses, then these guys don't actually have to come in, they can retreat, but they're stuck there in that adjacent zone, so they may get toasted on their next turn. So be careful how you handle these. Anyways, so this guy won. These guys won our screening force. Good for them. Now we're going to bring in our transports to land some units. And this is where things start to get very, very different from the way that Axis and Allies Global 40 worked. Starting off with your bombardment. Most of your ships are going to have a bombardment value. For example, here we've got battleships bombard at a 4, battle cruisers bombard at a 3, and heavy cruisers bombard at a 2. So it's a little less effective in this game. And you can only bombard with a number of ships equal or less than the number of ground troops you're dropping off. So in this scenario, we brought 3 transports and 6 ground units to land, so we can bombard with 6 ships. Now, if we were to take a transport away, you guys guessed it, we'd have to take away 2 of our bombarding ships, and we would only be able to use 4. Now, just like in Axis and Allies, bombarding is first strike, so if any of those ships hit, the units are immediately removed and do not participate in the next round of combat. Now, after the bombardment phase, then our units land. However, on the first round of combat, only infantry class units can disembark from your transports. Now this makes a ton of sense because your infantry historically were what were used to capture a beachhead, and then you could come in and unload your heavy equipment. So on the first round of combat, you're only going to have your infantry class units. Your artillery class and vehicle class units are going to wait until round 2, and then they can get off the transport. And so, another difficult part for the amphibiously assaulting squad is going to be that all of those infantry class units are going to take double casualties from defending land units. So if we're coming in here to Maharashtra and both of these infantry hit on the first round, we would have to take off 4 infantry class units. That's crazy, right? Well, that's why we have Marines. The purpose of Marines is to soak those hits. Marines take single casualties on amphibious assaults. So if both of these Maharashtra infantry hit on the first round, we could remove our 2 Marines instead of having to take 4 regular infantry. So Marines are very, very good, especially for the Japanese and Americans. Now keep in mind that terrain borders do still matter. So coming from this portion of Maharashtra, from this sea zone, we are crossing this mountain border to get to the roundel in here. So on the first round of combat, you will suffer the mountain modifier, and then on subsequent rounds, you will not have the mountain modifier. Just a reminder of that map video from so long ago. One quick note, if we're trying to unload with this infantry, and then on the second round, unload the cavalry because it's a vehicle class, if our infantry dies on the first round and we don't have any other ground units left in this territory, our vehicle class unit cannot get off and continue the fight. The fight is over, you have lost. The vehicle class units stay on their transports in the sea zone. They cannot continue the fight unless you capture that beachhead with your infantry on the first round. Additionally, if we are attacking both with units from the land and amphibiously assaulting infantry, units from the amphibious assault must be taken as casualties first. So if this militia were to get a hit, you can't take the cavalry because it came from a land zone. You have to kill one of these Marines on that first round. One last thing that's self-explanatory, if you happen to unload, say, medium armor, you cannot blitz out of a territory that you just amphibiously assaulted from. You have to wait until your next round, and then you can do all the blitzing you want in those land zones. And so we survived the first round, and our artillery and vehicle class units can disembark, and they can now participate in combat. Now, if we brought in a plane, they're not affected by this. They can, of course, participate on the first round of combat because they're planes, they're not getting off boats, they're in the air. And one last thing I want to mention is, unlike in Axis and Allies Global 40, say we've got a transport here with 2 Marines on it. What you can do is you can disembark them in separate land zones in the same sea zone. So you could attack both southern India and Maharashtra with Marines from the same transport. I know that's been contentious for my play group in the past when we play Axis and Allies Global 40, so that is different than the Axis and Allies rules in that fact. So keep that in mind, it could be useful for you. And that's about it for amphibious assaults, guys. Just remember, double casualties for infantry, so you really want to bring Marines, and your artillery and vehicle class units cannot get off the transports until the second round of combat. Meaning, and this came up in the online game that's going on, if you only have a cavalry in this transport, it can't even take an unoccupied territory. So if southern India here is unoccupied, this cavalry still cannot get off and take southern India. You have to have an infantry class unit because they can only get off on the first round of combat. So infantry are important for amphibious assaults. All right, guys, that's all I got for this one. I'll see you next time.